Okay, so today we're going to talk about pornography again, and I want to read to you a very short article. It's from a website called Sustained Recovery. They help teens to recover from addiction, and this is called Pornography Addiction in the Brain. It was published in 2017. It says here, research has been conducted about how pornography affects the brain. More than 10 years ago, pornography was deemed a erototoxin, the theory being that the brain itself may be damaged while watching porn. Now, this is going to be very interesting. Right? It's not a very long article, it's very short, but it's very interesting. And if this doesn't scare you enough to stop pornography, I don't know what would stop you. All right, so it was deemed an erototoxin, the theory being that the brain itself may be damaged while watching porn. This is in 2017 he's writing this. Speculation ensued that future brain studies may reveal the surge of neurochemicals and hormones were released. It's not, I guess, is a mistake in the grammar. Were released when someone watches porn and has negative effects on the brain. Recent studies are coming to light which validate this connection. That's in 2017. So prior to that, they had this theory. And the studies in 2017 were starting to prove that it's true. Brain scans. Valerie Voon, V-O-O-N, conducted research for a documentary on the effects of porn on the brain. It led her to conclude that the brains of habitual users of porn show similarities to brains of alcoholics. So when Paul says, do not be intoxicated, it applies to pornography as well, not only alcoholism. All right, show similarities to brains of alcoholics. A brain structure called the ventral striatum plays a significant role in the reward system of the brain, or reward pathways. It is the same part which lights up when an alcoholic sees a photo of a drink. The cingulate cortex is weakened over time by viewing porn, which is the region of the brain responsible for moral and ethical decision-making and willpower. Okay? It's the control center for the will. The ability to do what you know you should do. The ability to not do what you know that you should not do. It's the part of the brain that allows us to be moral beings. Now you start to see the strategy of the enemy by emphasizing pornography in our cultures is to destroy the moral agent. That's the philosophical term. The moral person is to destroy the moral person inside you. So you have no ability to do what is right. You cannot become righteous because that's destroyed. That's the enemy's goal, is to make you like him. Remember, Jacob, aka James, says, even the demons believe in God and shiver. And the next sentence is, "O foolish man, do you want to know that faith without deeds is dead?" So he's talking about the demons who have faith, but they cannot obey. They cannot do what's right. Their moral agency is destroyed within them. They know what's right. They know what's wrong, but they cannot choose to do the right and not the wrong. And so that's what pornography is doing also to human beings. All right, brain chemicals at work. I told you this would be interesting. Brain chemicals at work. Various hormones and neurotransmitters are at work when a person views porn, and each one in the neuro cocktail, the mixture, interesting they use the word cocktail, each one in the neural cocktail contributes to the problem. First bullet point, when having sex or watching porn, dopamine is released into the brain center responsible for emotion and learning. It supplies pleasure, and next time the person craves sexual pleasure, dopamine is released and tells the person where to find the fix, where to find the thing that causes the pleasure. Point number 2, norepinephrine is released, which creates alertness and focus. Suddenly, he's alert and he's focused. May have been tired, may have been drowsy, his eyes half closed, but bam, when that norepinephrine is released, whew, he's awake. And he's absolutely focused like a hound dog on a trail. Adrenaline does something similar in that it anticipates eagerly what is about to happen. So norepinephrine and adrenaline function similarly in this alertness and focus. Point 3, sex or porn can trigger releases of oxytocin and vasopressin. The hormones help lay long-term memories for the brain cells. This binds a person's memories to the object which gave that person sexual pleasure. That is why it is important not to have sex before marriage. Now, God's grace can make up for that. He can, and He does. But it's a long, hard road. Sex or porn can trigger releases of oxytocin and vasopressin. The hormones help lay long-term memories for cells. This binds a person's memories to the object which gave the person sexual pleasure. Point number 4, endorphins are released, a natural opiate, which creates a high. A high like when you're on drugs. I don't know if that term's used today. May still be understood, I don't know. An opiate, a drug. So endorphins are released, a natural opiate. It's a natural opiate in the body. And those are released, creating a high. And the 5th point, sexual release brings serotonin. It brings serotonin levels to a point of calmness and relaxation. Serotonin is produced when you're out running around in the sunlight and the green grass and the fresh air. And serotonin is produced in that environment. And it's the happiness hormone. So that when you get to the evening, the serotonin levels start to drop as the light levels go down, and melatonin is produced off of serotonin, and melatonin causes you to be sleepy. This is the last paragraph here. Being hijacked by porn. Multiple issues arise when porn is used, including the bonding of a person to an experience which is not real. When you watch pornography, what they're saying, one issue is that you bond with an experience that you're having, which is not a real experience with another real person. You're bonding to that. You're bonding yourself to it. You're binding, you're tying yourself to it. Multiple issues arise when porn is used, including the bonding of a person to an experience which is not real. The brain remembers where the high was experienced. It does. And each time it is desired, the desire will be focused on porn. Now, all they're describing is the incontinence. That's the term used in the Bible. The Greek word literally is incontinence, where you cannot control yourself. You've given up control at some point and you've not taken it back. And so, since you've given that up, your other sins, you have no defense against. Because that incontinence is the handing over of your self-control. You're surrendering to everything and anything. You're surrendering. And therefore your flesh gets to pick and choose what it wants from this time to that time, here or there. The brain remembers where the high was experienced, and each time it is desired, the desire will be focused on porn. An unnatural high is created, which focuses on surges of brain chemicals, and eventually the brain fatigues. An unnatural high. That means that you can get even higher by using pornography than by having sexual intercourse with your wife. It's an unnatural high. It's a high that cannot be created with another person. That's what makes porn so enticing. And the fact that you can turn it off, or the fact that you can switch it out to something else and switch it up and switch it more intensely, even during the experience. So, and the enemy knows that, because there's one strain of porn out there that usually has the word hypnosis in it, or hypno, or something like that, where they're intentionally flashing quickly different images, and they'll change the pattern. They'll linger on a certain image and flash, 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 linger, flash, flash, linger, and it's not the same interval, and so it keeps you off balance. And so the enemy even knows this when the enemy is guiding these people to make these productions. And the brain fatigues. And that's the point of those as well, is to fatigue the brain so that your defenses are down even more. All right? And they can do whatever they want to you. And they deliver messages across the screen. No joke. Huge letters, huge sentences. I mean, not huge sentences, but huge letters of phrases, usually, that are very, very degrading, that are intended to alter your perception of yourself, to cause you to take a different identity, usually the opposite sex. And it's not geared towards women. This is exclusively geared towards men. As in my research that I did, I didn't find any that were geared, any of this hypno stuff that was geared towards women. Now, some of them said for women only, but they were, when you looked and you read the messages, they were geared towards men, to try to make men think they were women. Brain fatigue focuses on surges of brain chemicals, and eventually the brain fatigues. This stops the production of dopamine, which leaves the viewer wanting more, but cannot reach satisfaction, so the individual seeks out more intense highs. This is called tolerance, where your brain starts to tolerate the levels. It starts to tolerate this level of experience. So if the brain fatigues too quickly in the experience, then it needs to seek out more intense experience of the same kind. This neurochemical and behavioral imbalance can lead to impotence. That's what it says. It can lead to impotence, frequent masturbation without satisfaction. They call it edging, and it's put forward as a good thing. But then after you get through this stuff where it's putting it forth as a good thing, then you're put into this this next level where it's talking about you will never climax again. That you are now not a man and you're not a woman. That they want to move you into this category where you're a nobody, you're an object. And they say that you're a sex toy. It's terrible. It's awful. The men. And it's geared towards white men. Absolutely. There's a whole strain of videos out there that are about black men, propagating these myths about the size of black men and things of this sort. And then the demeaning of white men, and saying white men are tiny and things of this sort, right? You can imagine what, I don't have to tell you the details. But they've got a whole strain of these videos and such, categories and tons of videos about this. And then dovetailing into that is what I just said before about the moving of the white male towards the edging where they never climax, impotence, and I won't go into the details on all of that. It's disgusting. I wish I'd never researched it frankly. But I needed to do that in order to present this to you. It's horrible. It's horrifying. And I would not recommend any parents allowing their children to access the internet until they're at least 18. Absolutely. Do not let them access the internet, unsupervised at least. But your supervision has to be like a hawk right there with them. And even then, it's still risky. It says that this leads to impotence, frequent masturbation without satisfaction, anxiety, fatigue, lack of motivation, inability to concentrate, and escalation of tastes for more bizarre and novel porn styles. So that's how they end this article. And then they give a plug for themselves that they provide care for adolescents who need a unique approach to treatment for addiction. The minimum stays 90 days, but many stay longer to get the necessary support and provide for individual needs. You needed to hear that. As hard as it is to hear these kinds of things, you needed to hear that. I suspect that there are other tools as well that create similar problems in the brain. For example, video games, especially the violent video games. I believe that those also do very similar damage to the brain through the same mechanisms. I don't think it's just pornography. I think it's anything that we're using in the virtual world that's creating this excitement level through unreal experiences. And then, of course, which they didn't talk much about, but they really should have gone into detail about, was that once you have bonded with this device that creates unreal experiences, and not just the device, but the type of medium that creates unreal experiences, and you're bonding yourself to this, what's your relationship with real people going to be like? Especially if you're married or if you get married, what will your relationship be like with that human being if you have not been delivered from the addiction to either violent video games or pornography? God help us that we've allowed this to be unleashed on humanity. I've written under a number of videos when they've gone in talking about the metaverse and things of that sort. I have literally written, burn it all down before it's too late. Now, I'm not an advocate of revolution, but when it comes to big tech, when it comes to AI, robotics, when it comes to VR, all of these things, they are our most immediate threat as an enemy. And anyone who goes and burns all of this down, I mean, not the people, but destroying all of this, I don't know what to do, about the people who possess the knowledge to rebuild it. But something has to be done. And we trust in the Lord, right? We trust in the Lord in any circumstance. And every generation has had its challenges like this. Ours are unbelievably more difficult. But every generation as we've proceeded through history has been more difficult. And that's the procession of time, right? That's the enemy has more time and more time and more time to kind of coordinate things and develop things, and then God destroys it, intervenes. And so we, as Christians, we're not going to go and kill people over it, okay? But we are going to do our spiritual warfare against these strongholds that have been lifted up in order to injure human beings who are made in the image of God, who are creations of God. Now, what triggered me finding this article was that there was a report of a woman who had entered into the metaverse, and within less than a minute of being in, I think it was 30 seconds, there were like 5 men in the metaverse who came to her character and started gang raping her. I'm not joking. She got out of that, but she's still traumatized. And how do you punish those men? You have to find out who was behind those characters. And see, that's kept anonymous. And the anonymity is the problem. And yet, not being able to be anonymous is the problem, because then whoever's in charge can identify you because you're a Christian, harass you, torment you, and do terrible things to you. So either way, it's a bad idea. Either way. And all that VR world does is it makes it much easier to do bad things to people. Not only that, if eventually we get to the point where people plug into it and they're just plugged into it 24/7, then Mark Zuckerberg gets to determine what you see, what you feel, what you experience, and everything. Because he has control over what actually happens there. You say, yeah, but other people can do things in it too. Yeah, but he is controlling those characters. He can set limitations of whatever he wants. He can mislead a character so he never finds the other character if you're trying to meet up, Or he can cause certain other characters to teleport without knowing that they did, and suddenly they're right there and they see you and then they attack you. There are all kinds of things he can do. He can barrage you with New Age things and try to convince you that God doesn't exist, or that you're God, or that this person in the metaverse is God. There are all kinds of things that could be done in that situation. We'll get into that in another video. But this issue on pornography and the tie to the chemicals in the brain and the damage it creates, this is important. You need to stop. You have to stop. If you can't stop, take a hammer to your computer. Get rid of it. And if your phone is a problem too, get rid of it. You can still buy a phone that's not a smartphone. Go get one of those phones. Then you've got your phone. You can still communicate with people. I know you can't use Viber or Skype or things like that on it. WhatsApp. I wouldn't use WhatsApp anyway because it's Facebook. But you don't need those. If those are a temptation to destroy your moral character, you need to stay away from them at all costs. Live without a smartphone. Listen, our pastors here do not even use email. You can't even email them. You can only call them on the phone, text them on the phone, or meet them in person. And they live like that. And they minister like that. You have no excuse. So if it's a problem, get rid of your computer, get rid of your smartphones, go back to a simple phone. May the Lord bless you as you seek Him with all of your heart.